The Lord be with you.
With your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him. We have to do the works of the one who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made clay from the saliva, and smeared the clay on his eyes, and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed, came back, able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is." But others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." So they said to him, "How were your eyes opened?" He replied, "The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went there and washed and was able to see." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." Now the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and gained his sight, till they summoned the parents of the one who had gained his sight. They asked them, "Is this your son who you say was born blind? How does he now see?" His parents answered and said, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees now, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age, he can speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone acknowledged him as the Christ, he would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason, his parents said, "He is of age, question him." So a second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied, "If he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is that I was blind, and now I see." So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I told you already, and you did not listen. What do you want to hear? Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" They ridiculed him and said, "You are that man's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we do not know where this one is from." The man answered and said to them, "This is what is so amazing. You do not know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to him. It is unheard of that anyone ever opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything." They answered and said to him, "You were born totally in sin, and are you trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe, Lord," and he worshipped him. And Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do see might become blind." Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not also blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you are saying, 'We see,' so your sin remains." The Gospel of the Lord. John Haywood. John Haywood. He was a British writer. He was born in 1497. He's known for his plays, poems, and collection of proverbs. He eventually married a woman who was the niece of Sir Thomas More, and he became very integrated into that famous, powerful family. He would write plays and even got Sir Thomas More to take parts in them, had him being in the play. He wrote a proverb in 1546 that said, "There are none so blind as those who will not see." There are none so blind as those who will not see. People could see. They're not physically blind. But John Haywood is saying, but they won't see. So they're more blind than blind people, because they could, but they won't. In the first reading from the first book of Samuel, God says to Samuel that people do not see as God sees. Samuel's trying to find the next king of Israel, and he's going through all of these sons of Jesse in Bethlehem, and he's not being successful. God keeps rejecting them, but he's not seeing them as God sees them. In the gospel, we have this account of the man born blind. Jesus heals him. But he not only heals him physically, he also gives him the eyes of faith. Because as the gospel progresses, the man asserts that he believes that Jesus is a prophet. And then as time goes on, his faith increases. And finally, Jesus meets with him, and he declares that Jesus is the Son of Man, Son of God. And so although he was physically blind, he's now not only physically sighted, but he also has eyes of faith. He says towards the end of the gospel, "I was blind, but now I see." Tuplos is the Greek word that we translate as blind. I was blind. But tuplos has two meanings. It means not only physically blind, like you can't see, but it also means mentally blind, that you blind yourself. You don't use the eyes that God gave us. We see things on how we assume they are, not necessarily how they really are. I was blind, but now I see. Blepo. It not only means to see, to look at someone, but it means to discern. I was blind, but now I can see, and I can discern. Discern people and things and situations as they really are, not as I assume. We are managed in this society. We're managed by people in power, by people who run the system. We're taught certain things. It helps them for us to believe a certain way. And so throughout our lives, we can acquire prejudice, bigotry, racism, jealousy, violence, because we've been taught to see that way. Not see things as they are, but through a lens of prejudice. There's a saying that we do not really see things as they are. We see things as we are. All that we look at is filtered through whatever suppositions, assumptions, ideology, assuming about certain people, that's how we see them, but that's not how they really are. And like John Haywood is saying, we have eyes to see them, but we won't. We refuse. We get caught up in the ideology or the prejudice or the bigotry or the racism. And we know deep inside that's wrong. But we do it anyway. We do it anyway. Could see them as they are, but we won't. We refuse. So John Hayward says, these are the people that are really blind because they could see, but they won't. And so as we journey through this Lent, it's time for us to think about how have we been formed or molded in this society, maybe in our family, to see a certain way, to see certain people as unacceptable. They're bad, they're dirty, don't look like us, they don't talk like us, they don't come from the places we come from, we don't like them, we want to reject them, demean them, punish them, throw them out. And so we're called to evaluate that deep down in our hearts. Do we really believe that? Or do we just sort of swallow all this stuff? We get it through the media, we get it through relationships. But prejudices and ideology that isn't reality, but it's how we see things. It's the lens that we look through. And so just as this man born blind was given not only physical sight, Jesus maybe gave him new eyeballs, gave him physical sight, he gave them this eyes of faith. And that's what we're called to have during this Lenten season. Not to get caught up in all of the darkness of the world. Don't want to live in darkness. St. Paul in his letter to the Ephesians said, you were once in darkness, gobbling up all this nonsense and garbage. But now you're children of light. Live in the light. Don't live in that darkness. Walk away from it. Be assertive. Listen to Jesus. Listen to the gospel. Experience Jesus in the sacraments. But then allow him to heal us of those things that get in our way of seeing our brothers and sisters as they really are. Not to see them for some reason, well, we don't like you, we don't like that, we don't like whatever. But to see them who we really are, they are children of God.